I found out my husband and dearest friend were having an affair. My ex-husband and I met when our best friends married each other. He was the best man and I was the maid of honor. After a couple of years we all lived in the same community and had our 4 children in the same time frame. We hired my friend, let's call her Habag, to be our attorney for our business when we thought about selling franchises. Habag and my ex, let's call him Dog, spent lots of late nights working out the kinks in contracts. And more. One July they had to go to New York for a week to interview prospective franchisees. Her ex-husband called me to say he'd hired a detective who followed them and saw them all lovey-dovey and that they only had one hotel room. Well, since it was July and sizzling, her front right minivan window was open about 2. I took it upon myself to puree a few raw shrimp with chicken broth and strain the solids out. Then I fed a long tube down to her rear passenger carpet and under the seat as best I could. I didn't choose the front seat because it had removable mats. I then slowly funneled about a half cup of my potion down the tube. That week it was over 90 degrees every day. It was ghastly. The triumph. Her husband and I didn't let on that we knew about their affair until we'd each had consultations with every good lawyer in our city and had our financial ducks in a row. Petty, effective revenge I don't regret. That's hilarious. Our Dog and Habag in a relationship now. No, she left him. One day he went home after work and she had cleaned out everything in their house but his 100 gallons aquarium and a duplicate Gary Larson cartoons book. She very likely will be disbarred for sleeping with a client. It feels appropriate to report her and let her have that very deserved outcome happen. This is the first thing taught in professional responsibility in law school. Do not sleep with clients. The second is to not commingle funds and always err on the side of disclosure. Please partake in a little more petty revenge. That would have been the coup de grace. She was only kind of a lawyer. She went to law school and she passed the bar in one state, but not in PA where we all wound up together having babies, etc. If she was practicing law in a state she had no law license, that's definitely worth reporting. She was advising my husband with her legal expertise, in many ways, more like a paralegal, I suppose. She never appeared in court. I hope. I think he was her only client, at least legal-wise. That is doing lawyer stuff. Just report her and let the PA bar decide if it's legal or illegal. Great idea, but Habag and Dog moved to Seattle. Before she left him here it worked. Poor baby. Wahahaha. I know from experience, once a cheater, always a cheater. So he got what he deserved. HB will eventually find a nice guy to settle down with who will then also immediately start cheating on her once they move in together. Probably with someone younger and hotter. Brings to mind a saying I read years back, if you marry a man who cheated on his wife, then you've married a man who cheats on his wife. Folks don't change much. For those who don't know how delightfully devious Op was, we'd each had consultations with every good lawyer in our city, means that those lawyers could not represent Habag or Dog. It would be a conflict since they had already consulted the other side. You can actually get in serious trouble by doing that. Had a buddy whose wife did that when going for a divorce, and the judge held her in contempt and made her pay his attorney fees specifically for pulling that stunt. Those names you came up with are priceless. Habag sounds delightful. Nothing like the smell of rotting shrimp. I'm July. Nice to meet you, July. Wait till you meet my brothers October and November. My grandma gave me the idea. Petty revenge at its finest. Years ago when my husband and I got married we had a decent-sized wedding, 100 people, that we paid for ourselves. Because we were still fairly young and not making a ton of money I tried to save where I could. I hired local people and friends to do many things at a discounted price, and because I worked at a 4-star restaurant banquet facility, I was able to talk them into doing the wedding reception for cost, as long as I provided A, B, and C. Basically we had an amazing wedding for a very low price, however, it was still a fairly large amount per person. Somewhere between $17.20 per plate. Not too bad, but not cheap. Anyways, the invites go out and after a bit the RSVP cards start to pour in and, like I said, we ended up with over 100 people, maybe almost 130, that would be attending. My aunt was one of those people. She RSVP''D for her husband, and their son my cousin. Wedding day comes, we get married, reception time and my aunt and family is a no-show. I notice because I only have 2. I'm irritated but more worried something may have happened. However, the following Monday I get a card in the mail from them with a check for $10. No apology, just signed with a small congrats statement. Nothing personal. I was so disappointed. So, I call her mother, my grandma, and I tell her what happened. She instantly says that doesn't even cover the cost of the meals she wasted when she didn't show up. What a cheapskate. It hadn't even crossed my mind at the time. Then she says the best thing ever. You know, your aunt is super awkward about her checkbook. Don't cash that check. It'll drive her mad. I didn't and it did. It also drove my narcissistic mother crazy because she got all the calls asking when I was going to cash the check. Guess she was too embarrassed by then to call me. A win-win. The best part is I kept the check and left it inside the card. I have a habit of keeping all my cards, and every once in a while I'll pull that card out and look at that check, and it always makes me feel like the pettiest bitch alive. I love this. Your granny is a petty revenge master. Yes, the real pettiest bitch alive, haha. I recently watched a show this line, and it nailed it. Of course your mother knows how to push your buttons. She installed them. First time I've heard this line. My mother is 80 with Alzheimer's, but she most definitely installed all of our buttons. 4 kids, thanks for the share. Grandmas are the best, that's some good petty revenge. Threatened to get me kicked out of school. I'll get you fired. Back in college I took a World War II history class. Barely. I'm a history buff, so I thought it would be a great class. Boy was I wrong. The professor's entire career had been spent teaching as a civilian on military bases. He always wore a suit jacket adorned with a bunch of military medals and hats you generally see veterans of various conflicts wearing. Think baseball cap with Operation Desert Storm, veteran on them. He was never in the military. He claimed his medals were gifts from his former students who were so grateful for his teaching. Stolen valor much? I can only imagine they were grateful because they didn't actually have to do anything in class. When he started at the college, first time the old fart had a non-military base job, he structured his class as such. We met twice a week. The first meeting he put up a handwritten slide with topics he would cover that day. He then went on a meandering nonsensical explanation of those topics full of misrepresentations, inaccuracies and conjecture, sprinkled with a lot of his own modern political opinions presented as fact. The second meeting of the week we watched a World War II movie. No discussion of the film or the accuracy or the actual events in the movie. No report to be done. Just like, watch Saving Private Ryan and appreciate it for being a good movie. Our final was to find a World War II movie we didn't already see in class and write a one-page summary of the film. No analysis mind you, just a description of the movie. As a university-level class, this was a complete joke. The professor didn't like me because I often corrected him in class. Like no sir, World War II didn't start at Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the war had been raging for years by then. Well, not in America, which is what matters. He also had a tendency, like at least once a class, of making the observation that X person is the new Hitler. Random foreign leaders. All Hitlers. Obama. Hitler. Pelosi. Hitler. He once called David Beckham the new Hitler. Like, where does that even come from? I tended to call him on these statements. He didn't like it. One day prof says that next class he'll be performing a one-man show he wrote about Eisenhower's D-Day decision. He warned us not to be late because one simply doesn't do that in the theater, his classroom. I was the editor of the school paper, and on the way to that class the president of the college stopped me out in the hall to discuss something I'd been trying to get a meeting about. This caused me to be 5 minutes late to class. I was never usually late, but when the head of the school wants to chat, you do it. Prof flipped his Eisenhower hat wearing lid when I walked in late. He screamed about how rude I was to interrupt his performance and said he was going to fail me and leave. I argued back that that was not fair and he can't fail me for being late to class one time. Especially since there was no such policy stated in the syllabus because this idiot didn't even make a syllabus. He said if I didn't leave right then he'd go to the dean of the department and get me kicked out of school. Fine. So I went to the dean. I explained the whole situation, his class structure, presenting opinion as fact, racist descriptions of the Japanese, everything. The dean was particularly shocked that we watched a movie every week. I was obviously not kicked out of school and allowed to return to the next session of class. At least I dodged the bullet of seeing his one-man show. Prof suddenly had other history professors in every class as observers. They tried some coaching, but by the end of the semester the guy was fired for utter incompetence. He claimed it was a free speech in the classroom issue, and somehow he even got interviewed for a segment on Fox News. He tried to take the school to court, where his ass got shut down hard. Seriously, F him. I spent years as a governor's CTR working on bases. I never would have attempted to dress like him, and none of my coworkers would have either. That shit would not fly on base at all. The green suitors would have taken a serious dislike to that. That was my feeling as well. I knew guys when I was in the Navy that would get into fights with people wearing service caps for ships they never served on. It left a really bad taste in my mouth. Did he have any vets in his class? How did he not end up on YouTube getting his ass dressed down for stolen valor? How the fuck does someone who doesn't seem to know a damn thing about military history get a teaching position like that? This was 2009, so I think that sort of thing wasn't as common with YouTube takedowns. There was me, Navy, and another guy who'd been a Marine, and we both spoke up. Mostly 18-year-olds though, who were writing his crap down in their notes like their lives depended on it, which is what made me be so disruptive. It wasn't fair for them to learn bad info. But yeah, the guy wore a sib and a purple heart FFS. He was eccentric to say the least. To his credit though, I will say that his Ike cosplay was on point.